Hello guys, my name is Adam Shadow and welcome to my lovely combat testing world. Today I'm making a video for you that I promised a long time ago, and I kept promising it over and over, and I finally got to do it since there were some important changes in the latest snapshots. As you can see behind me, I'm in the one right now with the blue torches. They introduced new types of equipment into the game, and so therefore motivated me a bit more to do this video. Today I will show you the 4 types of equipment you need for different kinds of PvP setups, how they work, why are they useful, and of course what potions and effects you want to use. So let's go over the classic setups first. This is kind of the setup you would probably use a long time ago, when swords did the most damage, they had no attack cooldown like they have now. You could probably even craft enchanted golden apples, and this was probably the best armor. You may even want to use it without thorns. This is quite standard. Of course, you wanted to also use a bow to be able to fight enemies at range. And golden carrots to heal yourself if you are playing in one of the versions that has saturations, if you don't just use steak. However, later, especially in the version I play in 1.12, this is probably the best possible setup. As you can see, we don't need a sword. The reason for this is quite special, and I have not noticed it at first, but these instant damage to arrows, or arrows of harming, actually ignore armor. So they do their set amount of damage. I'm not exactly sure, it's like 4 hearts or 5 or 6 hearts, irrelevant of the target's armor. So it doesn't matter if you have this armor or leather armor. This armor just reduces the normal damage from the bow. So in some cases you even might want to use projectile protection, but that's probably not going to save you because these arrows still ignore that. We have our elytra for flying around with some rockets. Totems of undying, of course, they are not accessible everywhere, since you can only get them from the evoker. We have golden apples, not just the standard version, because the new ones are not available. Here in this sort of setup you probably want to use how are these things called? Fire resistance potions, because these apples actually give you fire resistance if you eat them. Let's eat one. I'm not sure if this will work. Okay, it worked. You get 5 minutes of fire resistance, and also normal resistance, which is pretty overpowered. We also only use the axe, because when we don't need the sword, the axe is probably enough. Like your opponents will struggle to even come close to you if you can kill them in like 4 shots. And this is hugely amplified in team fights, where, for example, you are 4 people against even 10 enemies. You can easily wipe them out because you basically can one-shot any of them. We also have ender pearls for teleporting through small gaps, or when you fall down from something, or the diamond chestplates seem quite unnecessary in an open field fight, because you probably want to stay mobile and fly above your opponent and bombard them from the sky, instead of standing around them, or standing or running around them. Like I can show you right now how it probably looks like. I have not practiced this much, so oh my god. Yeah. Imagine in that cage is an enemy. You need to work out the timings of the rockets, like when they stop propelling you forward. You can see the biggest issue is not actually aiming at the target, rather aiming above or under it, depending on your relative velocity towards it. And that was quite a nice shot. And also switching back. The important reason why this is so good is because when you are flying around, your hitbox is a lot smaller than when you are standing on the ground, and as you can see, it's somewhere inside of my feet or probably behind them, so it's really unintuitive where you are supposed to shoot when someone is flying above you, which makes it really difficult for people to actually predict where to shoot if they don't know this trick. And of course we are moving at a much higher speed, therefore they will basically have minimal chances of even hitting you, even if they have some sort of aimbot, because we are constantly changing velocity, and they would have to calculate for that, and you can use various techniques for firing. However, if you are somehow limited to not being able to use the elytra, you probably want to use the jump boost to effect with the bow, because when you are jumping up and down like this and you are clever about it, you can basically shoot during the time when you are almost standing still. While if we look at my hitbox, especially in the newer versions, like you can see my hitbox even moves down when I crouch, which is not always the case. In 1.12 it's actually not the case. You can jump basically above your hitbox, like so much that there is basically almost like a 50-50 chance of even being able to hit you. If you just jump on a spot like this and you are shooting, the opponent has to basically predict where you will be, and if you don't just hold spacebar but you are clever about it, and you sometimes don't jump and sometimes jump quickly after each other, you can basically make it almost impossible for them to hit every shot, or pretty much impossible. Like not even some sort of prediction algorithm could allow them to hit every time, especially since the projectiles in this game fly rather slow. Even at this distance, I would have time to hit spacebar and dodge a shot that would fly straight at me, or not hit it if you would aim above me, which makes it incredibly hard to fight someone who is using jump boost. You can even use jump boost 1 or even jump without it, but as you can see, it's nowhere near as effective. There is only like maybe 50% of my hitbox, a bit more than 50% in my hitbox, which can be useful at longer ranges. And also when you are jumping, you can also strafe a bit faster. When I'm holding the bow, I can strafe a little bit faster when I am jumping than when I'm on the ground. But that's probably not that useful. However, in the newer versions, they added the crossbow. The crossbow is an interesting weapon because if I take a bunch of them and I load them, they are pretty quick to load actually. They are probably as fast to load in this game as you would load a repeating crossbow in real life, which is quite interesting. You can fire them off quite quickly. And you can certainly make a macro script to do this almost at the rate of probably a modern day machine gun, where you basically just fire out all 9 crossbows, or maybe even 10 if you have a really nice macro script, very quickly. This makes the crossbow so powerful that you can kill an iron golem with 8 shots, which is, in an ideal case, you can hit some mob every half a second. That means you can basically kill something like the iron golem or any player within a couple seconds. In this case it will be 4 seconds to kill an iron golem. In an ideal case, of course. I would recommend you to have a bit more time between the shots, but half a second is pretty good. But you can also shoot faster than that if your opponent is dodging. Or maybe it was 9. Yeah, it was 9. You can see that basically after such a short burst you could probably kill 2 players with it, which is quite insane. And especially on crossbows you don't have something like you have on the bow, which something like power 5, which increases the damage of only normal arrows. Well, the crossbow has no such enchantment. That means that these arrows of harming basically do more damage on a crossbow, even to non-armored targets. For example, I killed that iron golem in 9 shots. With normal arrows it would take 10 shots. And I was also using multi-shot, because that basically helps a little bit with aiming, especially if there are several opponents. You may miss one and then hit another one with the next shot, which is quite insane if you think about that. You can basically run into a hallway inside of someone's base and basically clear out their whole team in a short burst. Of course, we have the standard diamond kit. I also put these enchantments on in the sort of priority you want to have them. Like, first you almost always want to have protection on armor, then you want to have unbreaking, because armor is rather easy to break. Like, armor has like 300-400 durability, while tools have 1500, which is obviously a lot more. On the Elytra I would probably use mending, put mending first and then unbreaking. However, if you just put everything on in a different order, it doesn't matter. I also like to use thorns. Thorns have an interesting effect of basically applying some knockback to someone who shoots you. So if I would, for example, stand on top of this pyramid like this, my opponent would stand here, I would shoot him and he would have thorns. It would knock me off of this, which is really useful if you, for example, cannot use an Elytra and people just build 10 blocks underneath them, so you cannot hit them up close. I don't know why you would do that, but some people like to do that in PvP, and it's always a lot of fun to see them fall to their death, or at least take a lot of damage. I'm a huge fan of ender pearls. Some people prefer water buckets, but I always think it's much easier when you are falling down from the sky for whatever reason to just throw down an ender pearl. Even if you take a little bit of damage, you cannot mess this up. Like, even if you throw the ender pearl just before you hit the ground, it will always save you. Unlike with water buckets, where you can literally mess that up and, for example, hit a frame of the game where your player will not place the block of water, or maybe the server lags and you die, which is super annoying to die in a fight because you were just unlucky. However, you can save yourself, at least with totems of undying, if you have access to them. In the newer versions, it's not that bad as in the past, where you didn't have these tools. However, now in the newer snapshots, they added netherite armor and tools. As you can see, the netherite axe does 13 attack damage. The normal one does 12, so it's probably just one more attack damage, which it's not much, but this knockback resistance does quite a lot. It pretty much, according to some people who tested it a bit better than I, on some multiplayer servers, it basically reduces this to like 50% of the knockback if you have all of these equipped. Of course, you still want to use your rockets and crossbows. The reason why I still use a bow is because when you are in a tricky situation and you fire off your barrage of crossbow bolts, it's always useful to just have a bow to spam it like this up close into someone, because the bow has no attack cooldown. You can shoot it way faster than you can hit with an axe or a sword, and it also with punch 2 does a lot of knockback. Like I can show on this poor villager here, even with minimal pullback on the string, I can shoot him about 10 blocks into the distance. And it also sets people on fire, which can be quite useful in some versions, because shields in some versions don't block fire damage from arrows, so basically the arrow sets you on fire and you are still taking damage, which is really annoying. Shields are an interesting option, however, the reason why I'm not using them in any of these lowdowns is because you always want to rather have the firework rockets in your offhand. Those allow you to fly off instantly, and they the shields also have a huge issue. I can maybe demonstrate it to you when I use a bow and a shield. Maybe I should use not such a good bow, so I don't kill myself. Let's switch my game mode to survival. If I hold my shield up, the way it registers the protection from the shield, it is basically like you can see this line of the block underneath me. This one. So if I'm looking in that direction, it basically only protects me from it, but also in the vertical. I cannot, for example, if I look up, it does not protect me perfectly from the top. So if someone is flying above you with an elytra and starts dropping arrows like straight down at you, you can easily get hit. Maybe I can demonstrate that. This is a bit tricky. You can see that even when I engage the shield, I sometimes get hit. Probably. You saw that that one there was probably almost as good as it gets for a showcase. I looked directly at the arrow and it still did damage to me. Which makes using shields to save yourself really tricky. From someone also, I would always rather be mobile because not just harming two arrows are dangerous, but also you can use these instant damage potions, splash potions, or even the lingering potions. And if I go back, I can show you that standing in this is not a nice way to die because they do a lot of damage quite quickly, also completely ignoring armor. So if you see someone using a shield, you can just take these potions and drop them on their head. But I haven't met people using shields for a long time, actually. Now let me show you something about the damage per second of these weapons. So, if I try to kill this iron golem as fast as possible, like you can just jumping and critical hitting it, you can see the limiting factor is actually the reload on the axe. Those were about 4 hits to kill him, but it took me therefore at least 3 seconds to kill him, which is quite a lot, and he had no armor. Like, this was just straight DPS. If I would now try to kill him with a bow, keep in mind I'm not that well practiced in this, so you might be able to fire these arrows way faster than I do. Oh, okay, not like that. I should have used the damage arrows, not these ones. I always forget that the game does not automatically equip them in creative. You can see I kill him almost in the same time. I messed that one up a bit because I was trying to be too fast. You can see sometimes the arrow just deflects from him, and that happens when I hit him too fast. So he's still red. That means he is basically invulnerable for some time. I can maybe show you that when I'm trying to hit him. You can see I'm hitting him rather slowly. Despite me spam clicking like 10 times a second, I still can't hit him at that rate. Also, something interesting about knockback from swords and these bows is, I will try to measure out how far it actually goes. Okay, that was bad because he moved for some random reason. You can see he did not touch the wall when I hit him. Now let's try to do the same thing with a bow. As you can see, he was still in the air and hit the wall, so the bow has quite a lot more knockback. This also works with netherite armor. The bow will still be more effective and knocking people back than swords. I will put a link down in the description to get the world download from my world. so you can test this stuff out, or you can even open it to your friends on some server, so you can see it on yourself how powerful some of these techniques are. Sadly, I couldn't get someone from my closer friends online to test this on, and I didn't have a server running the newest snapshots. Also, one thing that is quite important, it is to have these things put in a way where you can easily access at least the bow. Like maybe have the crossbows put like this in your inventory, and have like your random blocks somewhere here. But if someone comes at you, you can quickly shoot him. So you're not completely vulnerable, because I have seen some people just have completely not having their weapons ready, and when someone comes close to you with 7 loaded crossbows and unloads them within a split second into you, you are basically immediately dead if you cannot quickly respond to them. And that's one of the more enjoyable things about the newer PvP, that basically you can prevent someone from escaping or dragging you into a prolonged fight. You can just come close to them and burn them down with the automatic crossbow fire. Unlike in the past, where you basically had to hit them with a sword, he would fly away, or even if you didn't have a knockback, he would just be pushed away. Then you had to run towards him, and he had a lot of time to react to you. Eat some golden apples, especially these ones, because they like immediately regenerate you. And also in the newer version, it's still pretty bad with the golden apples. At least the saturation thing is kind of balanced. I find it quite tragic that they removed that in the combat snapshot, because like this was one of the more interesting ways of healing in Minecraft, because you needed to have your hunger partially depleted to eat, for example, golden carrots or steak especially. Therefore, it wasn't as easy as to just permanently keep eating golden apples, shooting, and eating another golden apple if you take damage, and again and again. You basically had to be a bit clever about it, and for example at least run around or do something like that. One more thing is the environment in which you fight, and these can be oftentimes varied. If you are playing some sort of this competitive PvP mode, you generally have a kit something like this, maybe with potions or whatever the administrators decide to give you. But one piece of equipment that might be interesting to switch around is the diamond boots with a Death Strider or First Walker. They have both their add and disadvantages. The main advantage of having Death Strider is basically you can dive down into water, or you can fall down into it, which is quite interesting. When you try that with Frostwalker, it depends quite a lot on how the server is set up. Sometimes you just take fall damage, sometimes you don't. It is quite interesting how that works. However, Death Strider is also useful if you have to walk through water currents, because if the water is somehow on a plane like this, or a bit or flowing from above onto you, it becomes difficult to use First Walker. However, I oftentimes got into fights where it didn't even matter, and I could nicely run into the water, because my opponents didn't have either of these enchantments, and they tried to melee fight me when I had a bow and arrow, and that basically is pretty much impossible, because the knockback is a bit reduced, but the swim speed is a lot lower than the running speed, especially when you have something like speed 2. You can run really quickly towards someone. And you also can't jump to dodge arrows in the water, so you basically become quite a sitting duck. So if you plan on playing as melee infantry, you should probably use Frostwalker, so people cannot just run from you and jump into water. And also always keep in mind to fight in an environment that favors you. So if you for example don't have such good range weapons, or you don't have access to some of these arrows, try to fight your opponents in close quarters. Just dig down into the ground. If they chase you, you can at least fight them off in a straight DPS fight up close. You will still lose if you both have excellent armor, but you will at least have some chance. If you try to find them on an open plain like this, you are basically completely screwed, because they can fly above you and shoot you. So either run away or dig down if you don't have good range equipment. On the other hand, if you have very good range equipment and you are like me and you completely suck at Minecraft PvP with swords, for example, if your server supports the old style of basically who clicks faster wins, where basically people just jitter click as fast as they can, or even set up different macros or different keybinds so they can click even faster, then you definitely want to fly above the enemy or build something underneath you, but always keep in mind the thorns effect. That's quite cheeky. And also keep in mind that strength damage also works in a similar way to the harming damage, or instant damage, or how it's called. So it just adds a flat amount of damage done with each hit. So if you are not as good in melee combat, get strength potions. Like you can probably automatically brew them with any of the automatic brewing systems in huge quantities with minimal effort. So there's really no excuse for not using them. The one trickier aspect is to get jump boost potions, because you need the rabbit's foot. So you basically need to find a way to farm rabbits, which sometimes is pretty difficult to do. So yeah, that's about it for this video. I hope this helps you. Now you have all of the knowledge you would ever want to have about modern PvP in Minecraft, and how to pretty much always win, and what equipment to use. Like I said, you can find this world in the description. Thank you guys all for watching. Please like and subscribe and comment down in the underneath the description for any suggestions or mistakes that I did. Bye.